Good evening, everyone. This is Angela and Regina with Women's Personal Finance. And tonight we have Kat Tretina here with us to talk student loans since student loan interest has restarted accruing this month and payments are due on the 1st of October. And just want to start by saying, like, we are all very much for student loan forgiveness. It is really frustrating to be here, but this is the current landscape we live in. So we wanted to bring Kat on and talk about where things are at with student loans and help you figure out your best plan forward. So she is a certified student loan counselor and freelance writer whose work has been featured in Entrepreneur, USA Today, and more. And she is here to just talk all things student loans and hopefully be able to answer some questions for you all. So welcome, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do I have ability to share my screen?
You should, yes.
There
we go.
Heyo. All right. Sorry about that, everybody.
And then we will start with Kat's presentation, and then we did get some questions via email, and then feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll do some Q&A at the end.
Awesome. Okay. All right, I'm going to cover some of the major changes to student loan repayment that are new and exciting for this year, and also sharing some general tips on how to get ready for your payments to restart in October. Right. Okay, so like I said, we're going to cover some of the biggest changes, and some of those things are like the Save Repayment Plan, which is the brand new plan, and I know everyone's very excited about that, so that I'll talk about who's eligible and how to sign up. The Fresh Start program for borrowers in default, this on-ramp period and what that actually means, and then what I think is probably the most exciting thing, and I think it's not getting the attention that it really deserves, the one-time forgiveness payment adjustment that's going to help a lot of people qualify for forgiveness who didn't think they were eligible. This is just my general disclaimer. I am a certified student loan counselor. I am not your counselor. So while my information is applicable to most people, it may not be perfect for your exact situation. I'm happy to talk to people offline. You can always email me to talk about your personal situation, but just know there's always some exceptions to the general rule. And then about me, just so you know, like, I have been there. I was really stupid in grad school and took out way too many student loans and was drowning in student loan debt for a very long time. And that's actually how I got started in the personal finance community, was just trying to learn about it. And I don't know if any of you have spent time on like studentaid.gov, but it is incredibly confusing. And I do this for a living. So I started writing about it just to help people make sense of how complex that was. And that eventually became my full-time job. All right, so repayment begins. Interest has started accruing. It started in September, but payments are due in October. But while it does start in October, your exact payment may not be October 1st. It could be October 15th. It could be October 30th. Who knows? We'll get to how to find out where that is. But first, the first thing to do, if you haven't made loans in 3 years, if you haven't made payments towards your loans since that payment freeze, it's time to find your loans. And that seems like a really silly thing to say, but many of the loan servicers, their contracts ended or they pulled out. And so your loans have possibly been changed to another company. If you've logged on and you see a zero balance, don't get excited. Your loans probably haven't disappeared. They've probably just been moved to someone else. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau actually did a study and found that 40% of borrowers will have a new loan servicer. So finding out where your loans are held is going to be like your most important first step. If you don't know who your loan servicer is, the two ways to find out: you can call the Federal Student Aid Information Center, and I will send out a sheet, so don't worry about like taking notes. I'll send out a sheet with contacts. But you can call that number and give your information, and they will tell you who your loan servicer is. Or if you have your Federal Student Aid ID, you can log into the portal at studentaid.gov, and it'll tell you where your loans are and what you owe for each one. So that's the first step. Like I said, when your payments are due, it depends. And that's why it's so important to contact your loan servicer. Once you find out who your servicer is, you can reach out to them and they will be able to tell you what your due date is and how much you owe. And that might look different than what you've seen before. I have seen a couple of mistakes being made as loans are getting transferred to new servicers. So make sure you check on that and make sure it matches what you think your payment should have been, because there's a good chance it may have changed. So some of these are the biggest changes right now that I think borrowers really need to be aware of. The on-ramp, the Fresh Start program, the new SAFE plan, the payment adjustment, and how to handle loan consolidation. So the first one we're going to talk about is the on-ramp program. This is actually really cool. If we couldn't do loan forgiveness, this is a nice stopgap to help ease people into repayment. The on-ramp period is going to last for 12 months. It's going to last through September 30th of next year. And during that time, if you can make payments, do so. Please make your payments. But if you don't, the consequences aren't as bad as usual. Usually when you miss a federal student loan payment, the consequences are pretty severe, like wage garnishment. They can take your tax refund. That's going to be paused for 12 months. And they're also not going to send your loan to collections. They're not going to charge late fees, and they're not going to report late payments to the credit bureaus. So it won't wreck your credit during that time. But interest is still accruing, even if you don't make those payments. And if you are working towards loan forgiveness, none of that months that you've missed will count toward it. So it'll just delay how long you can get until loan forgiveness. So if you can, make the payments, but if you are having some trouble getting back on track, there is a little bit of wiggle room so that way you can get back on your feet. All right, the SAVE plan is the new income-driven repayment plan. There are 4 plans, and the SAVE plan is actually replacing revised pay-as-you-earn or repay. And this is designed to really slash payments for some borrowers. And that's the important thing. It's only some borrowers that will benefit from this plan. I see a lot of people really excited, but then when they run the numbers, it's not working for them. And that's certain earners will not get the same benefit as others. So some of the biggest things, it changes the definition of discretionary income. And this is where we get into the really nitty gritty. So forgive me if I'm going to geek out a little bit. The way income-driven repayment plans work is they take a percentage of your discretionary income. And that means the difference between your income and a portion of the poverty guideline. The other plans use 150% of the poverty guideline, while SAVE is going to use 225%. So basically, more of your income is protected and considered, not usable towards your student loan payments. So that's a huge change. And a lot of people are going to see their payments slash in half. Right now, if you make $32,800 or less, your payments are going to be 0. But if you are a family of 4 and you make less than $67,000, your payments are 0. After that, it'll go up incrementally, but most people will see their payments significantly lower. And if you do qualify for a $0 payment, that still counts towards the loan forgiveness payments needed, even though you're not paying anything towards your loans.
Wow.
And then the other big thing is it also excludes marital income if you file your tax returns separately, but only if you file them separately. The other plans, some of them will count it even if you are separated, even if you don't speak to your partner any longer. So that's a really important distinction that's completely excluded. And then it also, if your payment, let's say you have a payment of $50, but $75 of interest accrues and your payment doesn't cover that, the government is going to waive that additional interest. And that's huge. And I don't think people realize how huge that is. That's going to really help people save thousands of dollars. So that's a big thing to know about signing up for this plan versus the other repayment plans. Now, with most income-driven repayment plans, you can get qualified for loan forgiveness after 20 to 25 years of payments, depending on which plan you're on. If you still have a balance at the end, the government forgives it. Great. This new plan actually makes it much sooner for some borrowers. If you have a smaller balance, like $12,000 or less, you'll get loan forgiveness in just 10 years. If you have more than that, give you another 1,000 of loan forgiveness for each year, but it's up to a maximum of 20 years for undergrads and 25 for graduate students. So if you took out any graduate student loans and you have 100,000 in loans, it'll take you 25 years to qualify for forgiveness. Now, the important thing to remember about income-driven repayment plan forgiveness, unlike some other forms, is it's usually taxable as income. So if you have $100,000 of student loans that's forgiven, you're going to have to pay income taxes on that forgiven amount. Right now, that's been suspended through 2025. They're not taxing loan forgiveness of any kind, but there's no guarantee that's going to be extended in the future. So after 2025, there is a chance that you'll be taxed on your forgiveness again. So who's eligible for the SAVE plan? There's a lot of really confusing information, and a lot of that is because the loan servicers themselves are figuring it out as they go, and the government's also figuring it out as they go. I don't think they thought about all of the different loans and the older loan programs, so a lot of people didn't know if they would qualify. So right now, if you have one of the following loans, you're eligible for the SAVE plan right now. Direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized. I'm going to try to say that like 5 times. Unsubsidized for undergrad or grad, direct plus grad, direct consolidation for undergrad or grad. You don't have to do anything to your loans. You can just apply for the SAVE plan. You're good to go. But if you have some of these other loans, like the Federal Family Education Loans, the FFEL loan program, if you have HEAL loans, if you have Perkins loans, you can still qualify for SAVE, but you have to take an extra step first. You have to consolidate with a direct consolidation loan. So that's another hurdle you have to do. You can do it online. It's completely free, but that's just something you have to do before you could qualify. Unfortunately, no parent loan is eligible for SAVE. Parent loans can qualify for other income-driven repayment plans, and I'll talk about that later, but they're not eligible for SAVE even if they consolidate. Yeah, like I said earlier, SAVE isn't for everyone. You can use the Federal Student Loan Payment Simulator. It's at studentaid.gov, and it'll tell you what your payments will be under each plan. But also, when you apply for your income-driven repayment plan, your loan servicer is required to put you in the one with the smallest monthly payment possible. So if they haven't done that, you can complain to the student loan ombudsman, and they will give you a refund of your payments, and they will also ensure that you're on the right plan. Now, if you were in default before the payment freeze went into effect way back in 2020, the Fresh Start program is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and I really encourage you to sign up as quickly as possible. Like, close this, go sign up, and then come back to the recording later. It's really that important. If you are in default, you have to take action and enroll in this program, or your loans will automatically still be in default when payments resume. If you sign up for this program, yeah, you're current again. So that means it's removed from your credit report, so you're no longer in default on your credit. You'll be in active repayment status, so that it's a huge benefit. And if, say, you're going to return to college or you're going to go to grad school, you're eligible for federal student aid again, which before, if you're in default, you're not eligible for that, and so you won't be able to take out student loans or grants. The Fresh Start program completely overhauls that and lets you start with a clean slate. But it's not automatic. You have to enroll, and you have only a limited time to do so by the end of the year. So I highly encourage you to enroll as soon as possible. All right, now this is where I'm really a geek. I swear, this is the coolest thing. No one talks about it, and it's freaking me out that no one knows about this. The one-time payment adjustment. The government announced that they found out that people were losing out on months or even years of payments because loan servicers were putting them on the wrong payment plans. Like if you were on graduated repayment, extended repayment, you did not get credit for public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment forgiveness. And so you may have been making all these payments for years and not getting any progress. So the government realized this is a huge problem, and so they've instituted this one-time adjustment. You're going to get credit for at least 3 years of payments from all of the months that we had during that payment freeze. That's all going to count towards the different loan forgiveness programs. But more than that, they're going to adjust all of the previous payments, all of the previous loans before consolidation, and also count those. So if you were making payments under extended repayment, all of a sudden you're going to get credit for all of those loans. So you might find out right now, you thought you had another 5 years till you got loan forgiveness. You might find out that you're already eligible and your loans are wiped out completely. They are starting to roll this out, but it's going to be a process. Not going to lie, it's going to take a lot of time for them to figure this out. They're notifying people every 2 months through 2024. That's going to be a mess because right now there's no way to check what the official count is. So you can't look up your account and say, okay, I've made 119 payments under extended repayment, so that gets me loan forgiveness. That's not there yet. They said they're going to add that feature, but that won't be available until next year. So be patient. It is happening, but it's going to take a while to get there. Now, the most important thing with this, if you have FFEL loans, HEAL loans, Perkins loans, you are also eligible for the payment adjustment. However, you have to consolidate your loans and you have to do so by December 31st of this year. If you miss that deadline, you are out of luck and you won't get credit for all those payments that you made. Yeah, so you can see my big bold consolidate, end of year. All right, so your action plan for that, I know I went through like a crazy amount of information, so bear with me. Identify your loan servicer. That is your first and most important step. Find out where your loans are, who you owe, how much you owe, and what interest rate they're at. If you are looking at your plan and you realize your payment under a standard repayment plan is just unaffordable, enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. Contact your loan servicer and see which plan gives you the smallest payment. It might be Save, it might be one of the other plans, but try to enroll as quickly as possible. And once you find your loan servicer, once you're on a plan, sign up for automatic payments. It'll qualify you for interest rate reduction, and it'll also make sure you never miss a payment. And if you have one of those loans that don't qualify for the payment adjustment, consolidate with a direct consolidation loan by the end of the year, so that way you can take advantage of that. And this is my other big thing. If someone offers you to help with your student loans, but they charge you a fee, these companies have been so aggressive in the past couple of months, reaching out because they know people are crushed that loan forgiveness isn't happening. So they're really preying on these borrowers. So there is nothing that they can do that you can't do yourself for free. So you never have to pay anyone to enroll in income-driven repayment or to apply for loan forgiveness or forbearance. If they're trying to charge you something, it's a scam. Anything that you need to do is studentaid.gov. The Student Loan Borrower Assistance Center is also a really reputable organization. And then if you do need help getting with the budget, figuring out how to handle your loans, I highly recommend you reach out to a nonprofit credit counselor. nfcc.org is a great resource. It is completely free or it's extremely low cost depending on your income, and they can really help you come up with a plan. All right, I think I went rapid fire. My Philly speed came through. So I will open up for questions.
All right, I'll pull some of them from the email here real quick. And I also just wanted to quickly say hello to some of the people who we know are brand new that just joined Woven probably for this talk. As a reminder, it's not just these Zooms. You have access to the whole Woven network, so feel free to continue asking questions, check that out and interact on there once we wrap up. We had, where did it go? Okay, somebody who was asking, and I had already shared this question a little bit with you, Kat, about the Parent Plus loans. I took out loans myself to minimize debt for my son. I'm reading this for somebody. When they graduated, payments are starting again for the first time in October. Worked for the county for 12 years and starting to think about retirement. Is it possible to get an income-based payment plan that allows me to make the 10 years worth of payments at an accelerated rate so I can take advantage of PSLF benefits?
Awesome. So unfortunately, you don't get credit for past service if your loan payments weren't due. So if you work for a nonprofit for 10 years, but you start repayment after you retired or in the last 2 years, you don't get credit for that previous time. That said, Parent Plus loans can qualify for loan forgiveness, but there is an extra step you have to do. You have to consolidate Parent Plus loans with a direct consolidation loan first, and then you can enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. The only one available for parent loans is income contingent repayment. The good thing is, since you've worked for a county for so many years, your employment when you should have been making payments before the payment freeze went into effect, you'll get credit for all 3 years that loans have been postponed. So you'll already have 3 years built in towards loan forgiveness. And if you continue working for that nonprofit, you can get PSLF within, if you're starting payment now, within 7 years.
And this recording will go out to everybody. So whoever's posed those questions, if you need to listen to those again, you'll be able to replay. Our next question was, if we're planning to pay off our student loans ASAP as we're able, rather than paying the minimum for 10 years, is it still worth it to sign up for the SAVE plan? I believe we're eligible based on my limited understanding, but I don't know if it's the best plan if our goals include paying off the loans before the 10-year.
So this is a complicated one because it really comes down to, it depends on what your overall financial goals are. So yes, you can make extra payments under SAVE. Whether or not that makes sense to do, SAVE really makes sense if you really cannot afford your payments, if you need to pay the bare minimum and you're going to be hoping for loan forgiveness in 10 or 20 years. If you are able to afford your payments under a standard repayment plan, if you're able to pay more, it can make sense to do that way, and you'll end up saving more money than if you try to space out your payments over a longer term. But it really, this is a tough one because I try not to give very specific advice, but what I personally would do, I would sign up for SAVE, and then extra money I would probably put aside in a savings account and let that sit there. So if that way, if there's another goal that pops up, I can use it for that. Or if I've accumulated enough to pay off my loans, I can do that at that time, because signing up for the SAVE plan will give you the flexibility of that smaller payment and you'll have more cash flow. But setting it aside will let you take advantage of other things that might pop up along the way. That would just be what I would do. Not necessarily what you have to do, what I would do.
So it kind of sounds like if you refinance your home mortgage to a really low number, you can still pay higher or put it aside and save it, but you have the flexibility.
Yeah, it's like when people are like, oh, 15-year mortgage versus 30-year mortgage. Sometimes the 30-year is better because you have that flexibility to pay it off sooner if you can.
Especially perhaps now while the interest rates are high, which is not necessarily going to be a thing forever. So it may work right now, and then as long as you save it, you can potentially change your mind.
Yeah, I mean, life has a way of throwing hurdles. So it's nice to sometimes have that cushion in case you want to buy a house, in case, like in my case, my dogs need surgery, I'll have that cash handy.
So another question that I've seen pop up a bunch too is trying to figure out how this works if you have gone back to school and you have outstanding student loans. Do those continue, like, does that timeline continue to tick, or does it like freeze while you're in school? Should you be paying or defer until you graduate, from your like post-grad stuff?
Yeah, so the fun thing is, and this is a little caveat that kind of gets hidden in the fine print, you only get credit for payments that you make when you have to. So if, say, you decide to make payments when you go back to school and your loans are deferred for in-school repayment, that doesn't count. So you don't get any credit for that other than cutting down on the interest that accrues. So personally, I wouldn't think it would make sense to make extra payments unless you're trying to pay off your loans and not pursuing SAVE or another payment plan.
I also want to open it up to the folks listening live. If you have any, general or more specific questions, we have Kat here. Otherwise, we can continue with the ones that got sent to us separately.
And I did just skim your messages, everybody's messages, and it looks like there weren't any specific questions there. It just seems to be a lot of stress and some general confusion. So if there are any specific questions that anybody had after listening, chat is fine, or you can unmute yourselves. Keep in mind this is recorded, so you can choose to put your face up there or not.
Can I ask a question, please?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Hi, this is Libby. Thank you for doing this presentation. It's been so helpful. So I'm one of the borrowers who has very old loans, circa 2006. I went back to school and have a greater amount from about 2019, a very, very large amount from grad school. I'm trying to figure out about consolidating all of them. If I can do that, I have subsidized, unsubsidized, and older FFEL loans. And so I guess my question is, if I consolidate those, am I gonna be able to get a windfall, I guess, as far as with the one-time recount, to help, the payment numbers either towards a 20 or 25-year forgiveness? Do you have any idea?
Yes. So if you have older loans and you want to consolidate them, you have to do it by the end of the year. You especially, Libby, because you have those loans and you said you have a higher amount. Because normally when you consolidate, you lose credit for the payments that you've made in the past. But through the end of the year, they are going to waive that and they're going to count all of your payments. So in your case, when you've been making payments on older loans, for that entire time that you were required to make payments, not when you were in school, but for the rest of the time, all of those payments will count towards loan forgiveness. Because some of your loans were used for grad school, you'll have to have 25 years of payments, but all of that time will count.
Is the pay program, I know that's being phased out in 2024, but is it 25 years for graduate loans under pay as well, or just the 20?
I would have to, I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Or the payee or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll let me follow up with you, Libby.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
And Kat, I forget, are you on Woven on that network? You've been
Yeah,
with us
but
in
Discord
some way
scares
for
me.
so long.
Discord scares me, but yes.
So no, this isn't Discord. This is the other platform.
Oh, then no.
Okay, so we need, if you're open, by all means, we can get you on there. Or if not, we can find a way to get some questions to you. So we can start a thread for everybody who's listening on Woven, and we can drop questions there, and then we can make sure that those questions get to Kat if she can answer as she feels able or inclined. So
Sure.
Okay. And then we see some questions now in the chat. I'm going to just start from the oldest. I was an idiot and didn't know there had been a payment freeze and have been paying my student loans this whole time. Does that time still count toward repayment?
Yes, all of that time will count towards repayment, and you're not an idiot. A lot of people didn't know, so don't beat yourself up on that. And the good thing is, I mean, like the silver lining in this is interest was set at 0% for that entire 3 years. So you have been paying down at 0% interest. So you've actually been really chipping away at your debt. So that's a good thing too.
I think am I still here? I dropped my
yes,
headphones out and now I don't think I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay. So another question, hold on. Does putting money in a pre-tax 401k make it not count toward your income for things like the SAVE plan?
No, nice try, but no. They are onto your plan and they are making sure they count all of that.
You okay, Angela? Something's not working on her
If you can
end.
ask questions, my headphones
Yes.
screwed up. I can't hear you guys, even if you can hear
I
me.
could tell something was going on. All right. I'm sorry I was over on getting our thread started there. Did we get your question, Paige? Does putting money into a pre-tax 401k make it not count toward the income for things like the save plan?
Yeah, unfortunately, your income will count no matter where you put it at this point.
So, okay. So to clarify on the save plan, after 10 years of payment, even if payments are zero, they are forgiven up to 100 or that's 12,500. And if I take out new loans, they would be separate from those I already have.
So it's actually 12,000 or less, you'll be forgiven in 10 years. Even if you have a $0 payment, as long as you've enrolled in the payment plan, those $0 payment months will count towards that 10-year requirement. Any loans that you take out from this point, that is handled separately because they look at when your loans were legally or by contract when they entered repayment. So if you took out loans, say this year, the 10-year mark for 12,000 or less would start this year. So the earliest you could get it was 2033.
And then just, I'm looking also, we have a thread up on Facebook that I was perusing, and a couple of folks are kind of confused on how to track the 20 or 25 years. They said they've called like a bunch of times and they'll let them know, and they're trying to figure out how to track and get like actual answers of how much, like how many months left they have.
Yeah, that's going to be a disaster. Quite honestly, it's going to be a hot mess. I don't know if people realize, but the government didn't give the loan servicers all of the funding they needed. They actually cut their contract funding. So they're short-staffed and they've had to hire people that have never handled loans before. So they're figuring it out at the same time as we are, which is not reassuring. Right now, there is no way to track your payments unless you manually go through all of your statements and see what payments you made. They're working to fix that. They're trying to do it, but it's going to be done in increments through 2024. Next year, you should be able to see where your count is, but until then, it's going to be messy. And if you do contact your loan servicers, be aware it's going to be a very long wait. So I urge anyone, if you're consolidating, if you're applying for an income-driven repayment plan, do it like tonight because it's looking at a 4 to 6 week backup right now.
My dilemma is I'm getting tired of making hefty payments each month to try and pay them off, close to $1,500, $1,600 a month. I'm down to a $35,000 balance now, but I'm starting to feel like I should have paid the minimum and let it ride to 25-year IBR forgiveness and use those payment toward other goals. I don't know if that's necessarily a question or advice or just
so I would say if
but
you have been able to pay extra towards your loans, it sounds like that's what's happening here with the hefty payments. You may not have benefited from income-driven repayment. Not everyone who applies will actually see their payments dropped since it is based on your discretionary income. Some people will only see a very modest reduction, so it might not benefit them. And if they made payments for 20, 25 years, they might end up paying way more because more interest is building over that time. Is that the case for everyone? No, some people would have benefited, but it's a really tough call. I am in the camp where it's always good to make extra payments to get rid of debt as soon as possible if you can afford to do so. I don't think there's ever a downside to getting rid of debt quickly. So it's just a trade-off.
okay. I found the other question now. I took loans out in the early 90s through 2004. At one point I defaulted, but I've been paying off, but mostly on since 2004. I already have consolidated and only have one loan. Can I consolidate again to qualify for these new programs?
You likely have an FFEL consolidation loan if it was from 2004, in which case absolutely consolidate so that way you're on a direct consolidation loan. That will give you access to the new repayment plan, the new payment count, and that way you can also enroll in Fresh Start so that way you get your loan out of default and that way you start with a clean slate this month.
Oh, I see one more question. The student aid .gov calculators that give estimated payments for different IBR programs don't take into account the recount of payments. Is there a better way to estimate long-term payments / total amount paid? But
No,
more
the
of the
tool
same
is
of
horribly out of date. And that's what a lot of people have been looking into see like how much progress they've made to PSLF. It hasn't been updated to handle these changes yet. So try not to get discouraged if it shows up that none of those payments from the past 3 years count. They just haven't updated the tools yet. They are terribly out of date. So it just makes it really difficult for borrowers trying to navigate and figure out what to do.
Do you have a sense of like how long until the tools might be better, or is this like forever they're kind of going to be a mess?
Quite honestly, it's going to be a mess for a while. I had a call with the head of the Student Loan Servicer Association. They weren't told of a lot of these changes and they're scrambling to get things up and running. And like these details about whether grad students were eligible for SAVE, that only got told to them last week. So they're learning as they go. So it's ugly.
Okay. Well, so we're getting close to the end of our time. So I just wanted to kind of ask you if there's anything like for just the general person trying to pay off student loans, trying to wade through this mess. What's like the biggest thing that you would tell people just in general?
The biggest thing is, I know I just talked about how it's a mess, but reach out to your loan servicer. If you can't afford your payments, if you aren't sure what to do call them. It is a little going to be a bit of a wait right now, but they can help you get onto a right plan. Or if you have a major emergency, they can put your loans in forbearance so you can postpone your payments. But communication is key. The earlier you take action, the more options you'll have. So don't put that off. Reach out to them as soon as you realize there's going to be a problem.
This is wonderful. And to quote someone in the chat, this is awesome. Thank you so much. You give me hope. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kat.